The Prime Minister's mandate letter, increased processing times, federal court challenges, and investments in Canada. These are the discussion points for the week of May 19th in this edition of ImmPulse.
Hello, my name is Howard Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Yukon Hameed.
Today's a special day, Noman. We're going to start something new.
ImmPulse, our first publication, and it will be recurring updates on hot topics in immigration.
And published once a week. ImmPulse will carry important information from the media, from the federal court, from IRCC, with respect to events which occurred in the previous week.
Correct. Because of the pace of change, it's really critical to stay in tuned as to what's happening. I mean, there's a record number of changes, Howard, happening on a frequent basis right now.
It's a lot for people to absorb, so why not just listen to us chat about it a bit?
What are we going to talk about this week?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Noman. I think that the new Prime Minister has come out with a mandate letter. Now, historically, every minister of the government gets their own mandate letter with goals and objectives that they must achieve.
Right.
But in this case, Prime Minister Carney came out with one mandate letter. And that mandate letter had some high-level objectives which he's going to satisfy. And I don't think we're going to be surprised by them because he used to be head of the Bank of Canada and the head of the bank in the United Kingdom. So what do you think's on his mind?
Well, look, what I was pleasantly surprised about is, although it's one letter, when it came to immigration, it seems fairly balanced. Talked about sustainable immigration, bringing
Right.
down the levels,
Right.
but he also talked about trying to attract the best talent to
Right.
Canada. So again, as an economic leader, trying to get the best in a smaller quantity of people.
Quality versus quantity.
Correct.
The old days of the doors swinging wide open and 500,000 people arriving at some point is over.
He went a little further in that mandate letter, too. He talked about priorities in terms of linking immigration to national interests.
Right.
Infrastructure,
Right.
healthcare, construction.
Right.
Seems more precise, this measurement and targeting.
Well, how are you going to build all those houses he wants to build when you have a shortage of construction workers? And how are you going to staff all the hospitals if you don't have enough healthcare workers?
Right.
And how are you going to educate children and teenagers if you don't have enough educators? So targeted immigration is the
Correct.
future.
Right.
So we wish the Prime Minister all the best. We hope this works out for our Canada. Naman, there's a number of cases of refusals for study permits. The one that we cited in this week's ImmPulse is a Chinese applicant. But what do we take away from that case?
When you step back right now, if we look year over year in the publication, it speaks about Indian nationals facing about a 34% higher refusal than last year. So the scrutiny is very high. We know there was concerns that too many foreign students may have entered Canada. It resulted in 2 million extra foreign workers in the country. So it's not surprising that there's a high refusal rate, but those two particular cases, which are worth reading, talk about the fact that the officer still has to look at all of the financial information and all of the family ties. And they actually, that case, the two cases, they sided with the applicant that it wasn't a reasonable decision.
Well, what's the takeaway from that?
Well, it's really important when you're filing these applications. We know the scrutiny is very high. You have to have comprehensive information, detailed analysis of your family ties, of your establishment, and financial
capability.
And if you are faced with the refusal, make sure that your advisor is looking at the whole picture of your case.
Right, because it doesn't take much.
Right. One of the biggest concerns right now, Howard, is the processing delays, and we saw two very significant articles that detailed the concerns. One of them talked about individuals who are here in Canada, have filed LMIAs, and by the time their work permits being looked at, the LMIA is still pending, they're refused. So they're sitting in Canada without status.
Well, look, I don't get it. We use this advanced technology now for immigration. Everything's done online. They create time standards that they supposedly can meet because they can adjust the inventory they take in, like express entry. So what's really going on here?
When you file a labor market opinion, the environment's changed considerably. We've had individual cases where you might speak to an officer 4 or 5 times. They are drilling down, they're looking at your recruitment, they're looking at your benefits, they're looking at if you genuinely needed this.
So these cases
worker.
just don't go in and out anymore. You're assuming there's an officer to talk to. You want to talk a little bit about the layoffs?
Well, we know that they're looking at about 3,300 officers in terms of reductions from what we're used to. Yet in the second article, for
Right.
example, if you look at it, you would see that a work permit extension,
Right?
about 230 days. A study permit, 230 days. And these are up almost fivefold. From
And
the
these
time
people, I
was.
guess, are trapped here pending the determination of their application once they're in implied status.
Well, you make a great point because you can't flagpole.
Right.
So back in the day, if you were a UK citizen, if it was taking a long time, you might go to Buffalo to the
Right.
border, turn around. That's not on the table.
Right.
More cases are going in. And you mentioned earlier, there are caps as well on temporary numbers.
Right.
There's some concern in the article, it's worth a read, that suggests maybe the increased processing time is to reduce the number of permanent residents or temporary residents in a particular calendar year. So maybe it's being slowed on purpose.
Well, I'll tell you the good news. If all these officers are being laid off, at least we have AI.
Well, that's good and it's bad.
Yeah.
It's good in that you get a
Maybe they're
faster
not
decision.
getting it right with the AI yet,
It's going to
right?
need a lot of fine tuning from what we see.
Actually, I should say I saw a refusal of a study of a dependent application. The child's 8 years old, and the narrative said that the child didn't have enough preparation to undertake a course of study in Canada, and it can't be a human that decided that.
Right.
So, welcome to AI.
Yeah.
Now, we've provided links to all the articles and all of the case law and all the commentary in the ImmPulse edition this week. And feel free to click on the links and read up on it, and to go over to our website where we have larger commentary. We're just putting an article up now, which is a pretty good importance, how to change the immigration system. This is not working, and there's a new minister. Time for change is coming.
Right. Absolutely.
And you'll see it in our ImmPulse Weekly as it occurs.
Thank you very much for joining ImmPulse. Please subscribe or reach out if you have any questions on Canadian immigration.
See you next week.
Perfect. What's the one more time?
I like that. I like
That's
that last part.
Yeah,
That really-
I made it for you. Sometimes I decide them in there, but today we're just sitting around.
Was it an Indian applicant?
Oh, no, I just made it up. I'm very ticklish at this.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
I actually put it there earlier
Oh,
to
did
kind
you? Is it lucky?
Well, I didn't want them to think I'm wearing the same jacket every time, so
I see.
Oh,
I see.
so-
I put a different state at a different.